Hello everyone and welcome to EPR's Power Talk on smart opportunities in Indian electricity. The primary idea of smart electricity is to implement smart solutions through extensive utilization of technology and ensure adequate availability and accessibility of connected infrastructure. Today, numerous technologies are being put in place to enact the idea of connected grid system to cater the requirement of uninterrupted power supply. With the help of smart technology, lighting and green cables have a significant role in smart cities by providing efficient products and applications to meet the paradigm for a smart city. So delegates, it's an honor and privilege for me to introduce you to today's distinguished speakers. Mr. Anil Kumar Kadam, Vice Chairman for Smart Grid Division at EMA, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Managing Director and CEO of Cyan Canode India, and Mr. Vineet Mishra, Director, Technology Consulting at EVA India.
Mr. Anil, you spoke about distributed generation integration, DER. So can you please add more light about it on how can we integrate them in our present power systems?
So DER, there are two kinds of integration. One is technical integration and another is commercial integration. So technical integration, the technology side and the protocols are evolving. Even in technical integration, there are two things. One is electrical integration, another is communication integration. Okay, so you electrically integrate it in the right place. How are you going to connect? The subject is how are you going to connect a car to a charger? How are you connect the charger to the grid? Whether there is sufficient capacity. Whether it is designed for bidirectional flow of electricity. So that's about electrical integration. Communication integration is what is that protocol standard which each of these components is going to talk to the central system. Example, will the charger talk on an OCCP protocol? Will the car itself will talk through the charger to the entity, or is there an internet which talks? And so on and so forth. That's the technical integration. Most important is commercial integration. Now, commercial integration is how am I going to register each of the DERs as a commercial entity? How am I going to check how much is this DER producing, consuming? What are the different kinds of services it is enabling? How do I orchestrate this DER? So that's a commercial integration, and that's a complete financial subject per se. So integration has many facets. And this is the business model which will bring in the right integration, while technology will definitely support. Let me give you an example. If somebody comes tomorrow and says that there are say 10,000 houses, 5,000 of them have 1 kilowatt solar on top of them. So literally it is 5,000 into 1 kilowatt is a big capacity, right? Today they're all feeding only the individual loads of the house. Can I make that available for a larger community? If so, how do I make it available? What is that per unit price I'm going to pay? When will I need? How will I communicate with him when I take the capacity? So integration is a very larger subject. Technical, commercial, standardization, and many, many things which need to be considered. And now coming to India, India has the most big renewable ambition and the EV ambition. I was also surprised to see big amount of change the policies evolving in the states for EV also. Gujarat, Maharashtra started bringing in their own policies. You already have tax rebates. You already have some kind of tax exemptions. There is this green certificates. So no doubt you will start seeing good amount of EV coming in on the roads. Of course, associated chargers. And then I myself have enabled net metering on my house, because it was very interesting for me to do it from the Karnataka grid, because I got a subsidy. I mean, I am just a 3 kilowatt load on the utility, but I have a 3 kilowatt rooftop solar in my house. Can you imagine? And here it is, I have become a prosumer. So one person is fine. If 1 million people like that happen, what will you do? So it's a huge opportunity in India. And DER is going to come in many different forms and fashions. And how are we going to integrate that holistically will be a big subject of discussion. A lot of opportunities for DER integration.
Absolutely. And we are definitely here discussing about the emerging opportunities. And also, Mr. Anil, can you also talk more about the reference architecture you mentioned and how it is distinct from the cybersecurity reference architecture?
Okay, so there are two aspects. when I say architecture, it is only not the constructional part. That means this particular meter talks to this particular head end and this DCU and the head end and so on and so forth. That's one connotation of the architecture. The real connotation of the architecture is the needs of the technology user. We call it as consumer or different names at some point in time, but the needs. So without really explaining what is there inside the box or the black box or the black solution, these are the needs of the stakeholders of the system. Okay, what does a lineman wants to do using the smart grid system? What does an electric vehicle wants to do? What does an operator in the control center want to do? So basically, you analyze needs from an operational context. After you analyze those needs, you convert those needs systematically into requirements, which is more systemic. So you're trying to get into systems, right? Once you have that functional needs, functional requirements in place, you give a shape and form to that in the form of a tender document. Today, we may have more than 10, 15, 20 flavors of SCADA specification alone in the country. Every utility has their own flavor. But less do we know that whether that functionality is needed in that the way it has been specified. So India has unique characteristics. So if there can be there can be a neutral body like AIMA who can read different specifications of a function or a use case, bring in the most harmonized way of specifying it, so that it is most useful for Indian stakeholders, most adaptable to Indian scenario, and the best of the best technology and practices come from the global through industry players. So that's about reference architecture. Okay. So basically, it will become like a foundation document for the tomorrow's RFPs or technical RFPs of any technology in smart grid. That's about technical. Now, coming to cybersecurity, why we have another work stream of cybersecurity reference architecture is it's a very, very new topic for a country like India. But all of a sudden, we are embracing digital. We really do not know what is the security measure in a meter, in a RTU or a relay which needs to be embedded. How are we going to connect that security feature at the connected layer to the edge layer? How are the stakeholders going to be connected? There are three angles to it: people, process, and technology. So we would want to lay a very clear defense in depth, overlaying reference architecture on smart grid architecture from cybersecurity perspective. Therefore, we said, what does cybersecurity mean in every layer? Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, whatever it is. And then you would want to bring in fine confluence. Every time when you see until last 1 year, until last like 2019, there used to be one line on cybersecurity in any tender document. The system should be cybersecurity compliant, or it should be NERC CIP. It should be NERC CIP compliant. Something like North American Electricity Regulatory Compliance. That will not work anymore. We'll have to be very explicit in specifying what is the standard we are talking of. Is it 62443 standard? What is the substandards of it? What applies to layer 1? What applies to layer 2? What is the systemic standards? What is the standard for the technology user? What is the standard for? How is it going to be tied together? Subject of cybersecurity reference architecture. We have just started it. Hope we should be able to come in time before huge programs like RDSS hits the market. We are also trying to work with PFC and say that these are all the learnings what the industry has got from RAPDRP or APDRP or DRUM projects. Can you probably look at it from this angle and bring the pragmatism what we have brought in from that angle. So architecture, technical, and the pragmatism from the industry is what is the reference what we're talking.
Mr. Rajiv, my question to you is, how do you see the approach of private and state DISCOMs in smart metering applications like you mentioned for AMI and other technology?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Megha. Before coming to your question, I am unable to stop myself to touch upon the critical issue that raised by my colleague Anil. Cybersecurity is very critical when we are talking about so much of digitalization, and that too going deep into the last leg of distribution value chain. Is very, very important because not taking care of this can become a big problem if any critical breach happens. And I'm sure IMA will really come with this standardization, but happy to share that at Shanghai, we have been working towards the cybersecurity since long. Before even we started pilot in India, in UK projects, SMETS1 and SMETS2, where in fact our network is also certified by GCHQ, basically, which manages the network, secure network for MI6. So this already certified that level of cybersecurity concern. We are at our organization looking, taking care of already, and since India is also going to larger scale, we will be happy to contribute more and working closely with IMA to really take it forward for the AMI domain. Coming to your question, Ms. Megha, yes, DISCOMs are the real one, at the core of all AMI story. And private DISCOM versus government DISCOMs, yes, we know the private DISCOM AT&C losses are quite well in control, very, handsomely managed. Some of the government DISCOMs are also doing pretty well in 4 or 5 states. Yes, one of the point in terms of payment security, when my friend Vineet was highlighting, in AMI, the core of the AMI story is based on pays model, basically pay as you say, because in many states the revenue that is coming out of AMI deployment and the payout that is happening from DISCOM to the AMI SP is already a lot of saving that is happening. DISCOM don't have to pay anything from their pockets, already coming from their savings, from coming accrued from the smart meters. I will give you certain examples which were presented by DISCOM itself. For UP DISCOM, they were like saving 220 rupees per meter per month with postpaid deployment. I'm not talking about prepaid. And what they're paying to the service provider, that was ESL that time, was 86 rupees. Bihar, it was prepaid model where the revenue that DISCOM was getting even at the point of sales from consumers. Even during the lockdown, the revenue stream kept flowing because the consumers, even during the lockdown, they were able to recharge from their mobile as well as their colleague, their neighbor's mobile. So DISCOM don't have to pay. So when we talk about private DISCOM, their AT&C losses are a bit, I would say, the to go is very small. And that's where they are still in a bind that what they should do. But that's where the point comes that we discussed, our colleague discussed today, that a smart meter is not about MBC, metering, billing and collection. It is much beyond that. It is bringing a platform for the future evolution of DISCOM digitalization. That's where TOU is going to come. Then when consumer is going to use value-added services, and the basic input is coming from the smart meter. When you have 50 minutes granular data, then only you can have the visibility on the peak load management or sort of power factor management and so on and so forth. In fact, to my conviction, if we are running all these information successfully, then we may no longer need any DMS, just OMS will suffice with AMI. So this is the discussion that yes, between private and government DISCOMs are doing, but still I would say the DISCOMs who are left behind in AT&C story, they have much to do. And there is a lot to be contributed from industry to achieve their ambition.
Mr. Vineet, what are your views on it? What would you like to add on to what Mr. Rajiv said?
So no, I echo the fact Mr. Rajiv communicated. So this is not purely loss reduction program with DISCOM considering, and it is not only mere MBC project. So it's plus project, and MBC I would say is the outcome of this particular initiative. So while it is core technology projects, and again based on numerous discussions with the utilities, with PSUs, and with other stakeholders, I could sense out that most of the stakeholders are considering this program kind of a EPC program, which eventually is not a right thought. My view is that it's a core technology part. The technology is sitting in the center heart of this complete program. So if we talk about handling system or communication, so as Mr. Rajiv communicated, and regarding this mesh network, or now the technology testing around 10 kilometer, or pardon me, successfully already tested for 10 kilometer range. So it is not EPC. So it is again technology. Mr. Anil also highlighted cyber security. So I don't know how many of viewers are aware of the fact that what happened in Maharashtra. And Maharashtra was only one instance where I could say hardly 100 data sources were integrated. While we are talking about the smart metering, so it is 250 million data sources we are talking about. 250 million data sources, and that too so on remote location. That's not in any secured location we are talking. So we can clearly understand the importance of cybersecurity. And we could not touch base the point that backend system integration. I don't know anyone has one their finger more than Rajiv ji, backend integration per se. So MDM to billing integration, HAD into MDM integration. So all these things are taking this journey towards that DISCOM needs to consider it technology project more so to EPC or kind of only MBC. If I could answer Rajiv and Megha for this.
Mr. Rajiv, my question to you is, like, we are moving more towards urbanization and modernization. So how are we going to address the power quality demand? Because we need smart grid integration and connected supply at geographically challenging locations. How are we moving to address such issues?
So, if I understood your question correctly, I mean, how we can focus on improvement of power quality?
Yes.
AMI deployment. A very pertinent question, and really, I must thank you for asking this question. Right now, the focus on AMI, everyone is focusing on AMI deployment. One of the benefit is maybe Mr. Vinit would be knowing in UP when we had deployment, like 750K deployment that happened. And then we were looking at the power factor, average power factor for all those 750K consumers. And average power factor was coming somewhere on 0.84. And we were having review with DISCOM management in DISCOM headquarters. Then we were calculating that if there is a reduction, normally the billing happened in kWh, active power. So this reduction of 0.06 and multiplied by, for those consumers, the number of units were in some millions for that specific month. And we multiplied with 0.06, that how many million could not be built because of that power loss, that power factor loss. So that was giving a clear insight. It is not a benefit that DISCOM is going to get, which is anybody is today calculating. If DISCOM is doing the right capacity compensation, our reactive compensation at DT level or at distribution substation level, and is able to recover this 0.06, my calculation was showing that your payback period is getting reduced by 7-8 months immediately with a single action. So power quality, the level of insight that you get with this 15 minutes of granular data at last consumption point, unimaginable potential. We have not even touched it. And all things are visible in a simple dashboard, what we call it analytics. So these things are tremendous potential. We have already developed a previous project. In our current project in Stanford also, we are working heavily on the analytics part. That gives insight to consumer as well as DISCOM. Both have different requirements, and both can be one of the responsibility from industry side to really help them deliver these advantages of technologies.
Yeah, yes, and Mr. Rajiv still it stands as a challenge. Mr. Anil, this question is to you, that we spoke about standardization requirements. We also spoke about the emerging opportunities. The question to you is, what is your look of what kind of technology challenges or what kind of challenges you see in terms of technology selection, standardization, or interoperability when you talk about moving towards this kind of large scale technology implementation?
Generally any entity would do a POC and then the pilot, and after that they scale it up and stuff like that. But in India, we have seen that large scale embracement of things, So there is a good amount of solutions available, a good amount of experience already available on such solutions globally. Only thing is, there was a word of EPC, and the approach of providing all to one person or one engineering procurement company. That will not work. At the base, it has to be partnership, and after you select the OEMs who are going to be bringing the solutions here, and of course there is this EPC or a system integrator who's going to be bringing the integration. how long and how effective is the partnership with all players with the user, with the technology user. Okay, and as Rajiv said, and our industry colleague said, that technology is fast changing. Okay, so how are we going to adapt it in partnership mode with the utility? Because ours is a hard bound contract, and it's a L1 kind of an assessment, where you have all set of functionalities what is foreseen in a packet, and then they said that you give us a compliance from top to bottom, no deviation, and you give me the price, and whoever is the L1, they get the order. This is not partnership. So the procurement approach has to change. Of course, there are technical limitations. Things will evolve, but in partnership mode, everything is resolved. You see integration of applications in private discoms so well managed. You see data has been proliferated in all applications very effectively. Not that they are using some next generation technology. It's the same technology what has been deployed in government also, but government is mostly in silos. So the difference is this partnership and integration is continuous and technology evolution is continuous here. Here it is hard-bound contract. So I think buying technology piece should not be on L1 basis, and it should not be on a EPC kind of a style. It should be on partnership style.
This is definitely one side of it. The other side, Mr. Reddy, one of our delegate, was asking a question that he is an MSME owner and he is manufacturing switchgears and PCB panels. And he was asking, how can Indian MSMEs like my company integrate digital technology to products like switchgears? What is your opinion or view to that?
Very, very much. What's happening is smart grid is a basket of solutions. Anything which can help you improve efficiency, productivity, safety, resilience, all that falls under the ambit of smart grid. Now, switchgears or any other electrical infrastructure, including switchgear, is like an artery of your electrical system. Okay, so today through a tender you buy a switchgear and put it in the system. Okay, and less would people know that as long as it is not complaining, it is not looked at. Okay, if there is a breakdown, then people run helter-skelter to change it. But smart grid technologies can enable so much seamless data. Like Rajiv ji was mentioning, the 15 minutes consumption data at the endpoint can open plethora of possibility. So is some sensorized data coming from a switchgear. It can tell when the switchgear is going to fail. Okay, what is the impact of the failure? Let's take an example. There is a word coined called reliability-centric asset management in the western part of the world. What does it say? With the data coming from sensors of the switchgear or any infrastructure, with the business importance or the amount of energy it is pumping, I can know out of 1 lakh fleet of equipment what I have in my network, maybe only 1,000 needs maintenance. Instead of doing periodic maintenance for 1 lakh equipment, which is time consuming, and still not able to secure the reliability, and you will still face the failure. Instead of that, a little bit of sensorization. Example, let me give a very specifically for a switchgear. If I'm able to have temperature sensing at the terminations, where there is a simple air gap and because of which heating and there is a meltdown and there is a partial discharge. If I have thermal sensors behind near where the breaker joins the complete chamber, and if I have the ambient air quality sensor or even the humidity sensor, I can do so many things. I can protect my switchgear for the complete life of it. It is supposed to work for 20-25 years, and pity that we have breakdowns in 3 years to 5 years and 6 years. It's all because we don't have the health information, and smart grid can enable it. And you as an MSME can start innovating and start putting those extra small sensors, which can be a lot of value in asset management.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Mr. Anil. Mr. Rajiv, another delegate, Mr. Krishnan, was asking a question to you. He was asking how to achieve interoperability in RF module level. And what's your opinion on standardizing of modules by REC in recent SBD specifications? He also want to know, can two RF network work in synchronization with a common DCU?
So in terms of standardization of COM modules, this is a topic which have been addressed at many forums in many ways. So it started with Vyson, which was a group of large industry players came together, worked on the standards, and at least the global players like SAMCNOD and others are already in process of compliance. We are almost completing the compliance of ISO. Then in India, there is already discussion. WISEN adaptation by BIS is already happening. It's already in mature state, and we are already in discussion with them. It is happening. This is on the WISEN part. Now, in terms of model interoperability, means now NSGM closely working with BIS and industry players to make meter completely interoperable in terms of plug and play. Sort of cellular meter can be put there and simply remove that, put RF module. They are working on developing sort of a standard where the industry player can comply. As far as SAMCNOD is concerned, we have already tried and tested it. It's already working for us in the meters where our COM is integrated. We have already tested whether cellular can be simply replaced by RF module without any change in hardware, without any change. We are readying ourselves in terms of achieving the maximum interoperability. Now, the last part of question is whether two RF network work in sync with common DCU. So basically, when we talk about integration, we need to understand what level of integration we want to achieve. As we know, when we are talking about integration, similar integration in transmission segment, like 15 years back when he started evolution of IC 650 and Anil would echo me, we all compliance happened, and then it started getting put into 400 kV and 765 kV, very critical power infrastructure. Despite that integration, there is a basic fine tuning always need to be done at the substation level. So it's a choice of utility whether you want plug and play or not. Where the utilities like Power Grid, they had a clear the priority that they would like to have interoperability, but by this sort of customization where they should have the basic control. So I'm sure with the NSGM initiative, this question, the last part of question, will be answered very fast, that what level of integration we would like to achieve. And from the industry perspective, we are ready and we are trying to align our solution to have to develop maximum interoperability to give comfort to the DISCOMs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajiv. And Mr. Krishnan is there with us. He also claiming that he installed more than 3 to 4 million smart meters. Mr. Krishnan, would you like to unmute and speak?
My question is we already gone ahead as India, 33-40 lakh meters are installed by ESL and various tenders. Our question is there was no cyber security and other things specified in that. And we had seen some blackouts, lakhs of meters were disconnected with a single command. What happens to those meters which are already in installation and there is no standards for such cyber security or hacking? What happens to those meters? How do we protect that? Question is to Anil Kumar.
Thanks to DLMS, there is basic cyber security possibility in DLMS today. What has been taken. And all we need to do is enable that in a seamless way and manage it. The bigger problem is the possibility of control. Somebody from somewhere can hack into the system and take control, and he can either disrupt the complete system, or he can threaten for a ransom. So there has to be a definite audit done on the platform, what is being used in the technology deployment, be it meter, be it communication, and be it the HES or even the MDM, and assess all the vulnerabilities what's available and see how do you plug that vulnerability. The vulnerability can be inherently within the platform or a protocol not providing the provision, okay? Or the vulnerability would be the way or the people in the process are organized. So it has to be seen from these three perspectives, and that is I'm very happy that the guidelines to regulation from Ministry of Power, which was recently released in October 7th, and before that there were 2 orders on mandatory testing for all imported products, which is getting into network. Now that guideline very clearly says there has to be a security perimeter identification by every utility. Every utility should have a CISO appointed, and the CISO should do 2 audits. 2 audits is too big actually. When we were not really convinced with the number of audits what came on the regulation, because even 1 audit takes a long time. 2 audits, and the finding of the audit has to be acted upon. Now, what is acted in terms of people, in terms of process, in terms of technology? It's pretty straightforward and easy to plug the technology aspect. It's difficult to plug the people and the process aspect because the whole organization has to fall in place. So what standard are they going to fall in place? Example, if there is a vulnerability in a platform used in one of the devices, it's a matter of patching it. Okay. It's a matter of not allowing it to happen. Example, 62443 is the standard the whole world is going towards in terms of OT technologies, right? And they're also talking of 62351 for communication, right? Now, whatever is the standard, how well it is adapted, how well it is connected to people and process is defense in depth. It is just not testing a product for embedded Trojan and malware and just putting it and hoping that nothing is going to happen. It's wrong. Okay, so it needs audit, it needs working, and therefore there is an organization of cybersecurity which needs to evolve in every utility, starting from CISO. And that's the vision of Ministry of Power. And really kudos to Ministry of Power. They're trying to put a lot of things at one shot, but it's needed because we are also trying to embrace digital very fast.
Yeah, Mr. Anil, thank you. And also let us hear from Mr. Vineet. Mr. Vineet, what you would like to say? Have you ever encountered this challenge?
Eventually, based on my experience and what we have seen that utilities are not very pro towards these kind of cyber security aspects. But again, I will quote the anecdotes, and there's a misconception in the market regarding one instance of blackout happened in one discom. But very true and hands on my heart that that was not a cyber security failure based on my previous analysis. And I will not quote because there are n number of I would say core committees being constituted. They submitted their report. But yes, as a sector expert, as a technology expert, I would say that was not a cyber security failure at all. That we can say we can make some more stringent business processes to stop those kind of things in future. But yes, as rightly highlighted by Mr. Anil, we need not to separate this thing from other technology projects. So you can consider it from UIDI kind of project, Aadhaar, and all marquee projects which are happening in India. So the kind of cyber securities processes and the technologies adopted in those places, we need to adhere those kind of policies, because in any case, smart metering is a national program for us, and we all know what may be the repercussion of any compromise in cyber securities for such big program. And we have already seen one failure as in Maharashtra itself, that was largely from OT side. So smart metering is a bit IT, but largely OT project, which I could perceive. So we need to keep in mind what OT cyber securities compliances which we need to make. We need to do that. Secondly, as Anilji highlighted, that we need to do number of cyber audits. Yes, we need to do that, and we need to make a. I think it's a part of our SOP that this is the frequency of particular cyber audit. And I would be very happy, though Ministry has already laid down the guidelines that all utilities need to follow cyber security guidelines, and they need to do go for SOC compliances as well. But I would be very happy, and though we are also working around in this space, that whatever learnings from various states under this kind of program in initial stage, we need to extend those learnings with other DISCOMs also, so that DISCOMs can fix up those things well in advance. And there may be some mandate in coming future down the line, 6 months or a year, Ministry may publish certain guidelines for cyber security aspect, especially for smart metering.
Yes, Mr. Vineet, and I am sure this is still getting evolved. Mr. Krishnan, I hope your concerns are addressed by Mr. Anil and Mr. Vineet.
Sir, just one last question that yes, that this should be attacked at the device level or at the HES level or at the MDM level. And how prepared are the DISCOMs to do a user acceptance test after the implementation of a system is done on such cyber attacks? Because right now they go by simple type tests, and CPRI and such agencies are involved in smart meters. who have no knowledge of how to test a cyber security attack. Such processes are not defined at the user acceptance level. How do they handle this at a DISCOM level or at a lower level?
Thank you for the question.
Where to put a checkpoint?
Thanks for this question, Mr. Krishnan. So it's a journey that technical evolution, competency evolution is happening in DISCOMs. Journey started from RFP, DRP, Part A IT implementation, where the exposure to the DISCOM was specifically on the billing system, the SCADA DMS system. And thanks to the pilot projects and the ESL projects, wherever these projects were happening, they have understood what is the right way of UAT, user acceptance, what is the right way of the SOP handling when the cyber security testing is happening by a certain qualified auditors, then what should be the periodicity, whether it's 6 months, 3 months, what should be the standard processes, what should be the limits of the testing, whether it is end-to-end or it is getting done in pockets. So when we speak in like 2021 December, these DISCOMs are far better aware of what they were aware 2 years, 3 years before. So it's a process evolution where smart metering deployment is not yet started. Certainly they have to like live this journey another 6 months or a year, and not only DISCOMs, I would say even industry players, even the AMISPs. It was a journey for them as well. I mean, the system integrators, when they started the project 3 years before, I mean, I would commend the team from ENY who really started the story at ESL way back in 2017, is working on the RFP. When the award happened, the project started, even ENY team had a lot of struggle in really helping the system integrators. They also evolved to the Indian ecosystem. The system integrator learned, then DISCOM learned. So it's a journey basically. And I am pretty confident the way all those learnings happened in this large project. The problems of large project is different. When you do project of 100K, any problem, challenges come in the field, the impact looks like this much. And when the problem happens in a million deployment, it looks very big. And that's where, thanks to all those large projects, now industry is well equipped, the DISCOMs are well equipped, and DISCOMs are very much talking to each other. They are very careful when they are devising RFPs. So I'm sure it is the knowledge is spreading very fast.
I'd like to add on.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What Mr. Rajiv communicated. So very valid point, Mr. Krishnan, in terms of UAT by state DISCOMs. But very late, I have seen that last 6-7 months, DISCOMs are very proactive in this space now. Because as I told that earlier, they were considering it's an easy project. Now they are considering it's a technical project. And DISCOMs are also having cybersecurity agencies which are doing cybersecurity audit, or DISCOMs are now having IT agencies which are doing rigorous UAT. So I'll not put the states' names. So states are running UAT for the last 6 months. All use cases they are validating before giving any sign-on, and especially some incidences considering some incidences happened in the past. DISCOMs are very proactive now. On top of that, system integrators are also understanding the importance of this thing, because this is not kind of a project that you have given your money and you are out of the game. Now you need to run the show for 10 years. So system integrators are also ensuring that there should not be any challenge up to a certain extent. So they are also trying to get the UAT at the best level, because ultimately they need to run the show for 10 years. So that's what I personally see as a big awareness in the sector. And as rightly said by Rajiv ji, it's a journey. DISCOMs will gradually learn from the others. And I hope by the time full swing boot hit the ground, we would be on top of this.
I would like to just, Mr. Vishesh was asking where we can get some documents about smart metering or AMI technology and to enhance. Is there any way we can get that? So if anybody can put some link or, direct him one way or other to get this information will be great. And he was also asking, could we have a session about commercial part or AMI implementation expense calculations? Probably we can consider it as one of the subject in the coming sessions, if any of the speakers are willing to take it up. And see, he was also asking what all future aspect concerned with revamped scheme. Can someone address this? The last question.
So, if I correctly hear the question, it's a multifaceted question which been asked, but starting from the last point that features for revamp scheme, is it so? It's specific to smart metering or all features of the revamp?
It looks like he's addressing to the smart metering aspect, because he posted the question when we were discussing about smart metering.
So smart metering, though I try to give a glimpse of what part of smart metering covered under this revamped scheme. So typically, the outlay is $22 billion USD for 10 years duration. Per node cost being considered 6,000 nodes per smart meter. And there's a component in terms of grant which is coming from government is 15% of this. That is around 900 for normal state. And special category state, it's around 22.5%, which 1150. There's a bit ambiguous part of the scheme that nothing been mentioned in terms of capping of system metering part, but now state discoms are considering again 15% or 22.5% respective states, whether it's special category state or normal state for system metering part, but there's no capping. And the model is TOTEX model, or I would say TOTEX is being considered because 900 is coming in terms of grant. Otherwise, it's largely OPEX model where system integrator needs to install the system within 2.5 years and next 7.5 years to maintain the system. And per month, per meter basis, it's to be given to the state. All SLA need to be managed or monitored. Adhered by system integrator. On top of that, there's a component around 2.5% of total GBS. Total GBS for smart metering in this scheme is around 24,000 crore. So 2.5% comes around 600 crore for program management activity, means PMA. State discoms can take support for PMA. Those are the key contours in my best understanding. And there's a standard bidding document. The state discom can follow that standard bidding document already published by Ministry, MISP. Yes, one more important point, the recent request raised by most of the state that they are willing to follow one MDM under billing system. So probably Ministry or REC is coming up with a new document, which is volume 2, volume 1, which is comprising MDM plus billing, volume 2, which would have only billing part, MDM would be separate. So these are all the updates as of now.
Yes, Vinishji, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and insight about it. Thank you so much.
We are finding the SBDs are being floated, but not a single tender is getting finalized. It goes into endless discussions after the SBD is floated. What is your view on this? Where to put a full stop?
So, Mr. Krishnan, in short, I would say we need to wait for 3 more months because states have submitted their DPR, action plan, everything. So once they've been this DPR and action plan is getting approved from the ministry, immediately state will publish the standard bidding document, MISP requirement on the standard bidding document. And it's clearly mentioned, if a state is going to implement smart metering, they need to follow standard bidding document.
Before we move ahead, I request Mr. Anil Kumar, can you give a closing statement for this session?
A lot of enriched discussion happened. We started with what's our ambition, and then we deep dived on how important communication is, because we are proliferating digitalization everywhere. Rajiv ji spoke about how important it is to look at that. And then a lot of policy things were really brought in very, very objectively on the league. I think, and then from AIMA, I was able to really bring in a little bit of perspective on what we're doing to standardize things. So all in all, a lot of relevant subjects and connected dots spoken very well. I hope the participants should have really got the context of what we were trying to talk in a very holistic sense and a very connected way. The future is very bright. A lot of electrification, a lot of digitization, and hope everything will start moving in more partnership mode, and things will sail smoothly going further in this big, large adoption.
We hope you have enjoyed the Power Talk. Before wrapping up this session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Anil Kumar, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, and Mr. Vineet Mishra. I would also like to thank the Associate Editor of EPR Magazine, Ms. Megha Iyer, and our editor, Mr. Prasad Nair, for this initiative. To get more updates from EPR, you can follow our social media pages. Also, our applications are available on Google Play and App Store for easy reading. With this, we would like to announce the closing of today's session. Kindly stay tuned for more such sessions. Thank you and goodbye.